There are certain moments that divide your life into two separate sections, before and after. That seemingly ordinary afternoon ultimately turned into a pivotal event for me. Everything unfolded as expected. I was at home alone, while Danny was away on another work trip. The only upside to his absence was the rare opportunity to carve out some personal time for myself, something I had neglected for far too long. Years of Danny's indifference had left me feeling as though any moment of solitude was a gift, and today was one of those precious instances. I sat in my room, nestled among my favorite bedding, laptop in hand, with several of my personal belongings close by. I had often experienced such moments when Henry was away, but now that he had returned from university, finding opportunities like this had become almost impossible. Henry, Danny's son from his first marriage, was someone whose mere name stirred something inside me. The first time we met, I was struck by his towering height, his strong features, and his intense gaze. However, that was just a passing thought, nothing more. I knew Henry would be out with his friends until the evening, so I felt free to retreat to my room and enjoy some alone time. I thought I had closed the door, but I didn't realize it hadn't latched properly. And that's when everything spiraled. As I was starting to unwind, Henry unexpectedly walked in. Our eyes locked for a split second, but it felt like an eternity. I tried to hide the items in my hands, but it was futile. The sound from my laptop reached his ears, and his eyes widened even more. I froze, unable to move or hide. The silence, the noise, and the humiliation left me paralyzed. My heart was pounding as though it might explode. The look on Henry's face was unforgettable. Surprise, curiosity, and something else. Maybe even desire. That gaze filled a void I had been hiding inside me for a long time. "I suppose I should have knocked," Henry said, his voice unsteady but still strong. He backed away, his eyes still on me, as the door closed. I didn't understand what had just happened, but something had begun between us. Something wrong, dangerous, yet irresistibly compelling. As soon as the door shut, I collapsed onto my bed, hiding my face in my hands. What had I done? I was a 42-year-old woman, and my stepson had just seen me like that. I couldn't stop thinking about the expression in his eyes, and every time I remembered it, a strange warmth enveloped me. At the same time, I was overwhelmed with shame. That look wasn't just surprise. There was something deeper, like he understood me or even wanted more. I knew it felt wrong and repulsive, yet I couldn't stop myself. My heart raced, and that sensation inside me went beyond mere embarrassment. I had noticed Henry's attention before. His gaze had lingered on me, conveying his interest. But I always dismissed it, pretending it wasn't there. Until now. 3 days passed. Danny was still away, leaving Henry and me alone in the house. I didn't know how to face him, but beneath the anxiety, there was an undeniable thrill. It felt forbidden, dangerous, and unavoidable. I thought it would end there. Just an incident. But I had no idea what was coming next. I was unaware of the events that were about to unfold. The next day, I didn't see Henry at all. That night, I had trouble sleeping. The following day, most of the time passed in silence. Henry barely left his room, and after quickly preparing a meal in the kitchen, I retreated to the living room. It seemed like we were both determined to avoid eye contact and conversation, yet the silence between us was thick with tension. We both recognized it, but chose to ignore it. In the evening, I decided to take a shower. As the warm water streamed over my skin, I tried to push the events of the previous day out of my mind. But Henry's expression, vivid and unforgettable, kept replaying in my thoughts. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't hear the power go out until the room was plunged into darkness. The water kept flowing, but everything else was still. Panic set in briefly. I turned off the shower and wrapped myself in a robe. As I tightened the belt, I heard Henry's voice from the doorway. "Emma, are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine. I think the power's out," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. I fastened the robe and walked towards his voice. When I entered the kitchen, I couldn't see him, but I could hear his footsteps. "We need to find a candle," he said, his voice tight. The faint light from a street lamp outside barely illuminated a corner of the kitchen, leaving the rest in darkness. As we both moved awkwardly, I accidentally bumped into him. My shoulder hit his chest, and we both froze, holding our breath. His hands instinctively caught my waist to steady me, but the touch lingered. "Sorry, I didn't see you," Henry murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Our eyes met, lit by the dim light seeping in from outside. The attraction between us was stronger than anything I had ever felt. "It's okay," I whispered, unable to hide the tremor in my voice. My heart was racing so fast I thought he could feel it. Henry's gaze shifted to my lips, his breath brushing my face, and the space between us shrank to almost nothing. "Emma," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't want to pull away. At that moment, every barrier I had put up vanished. Then, the lights came back on, and we both jerked back as if caught. Henry went to the breaker box, pretending to check it, but I couldn't shake the gravity of what had just happened. As I walked back to the living room, Henry followed, his eyes still locked on mine. But now there was a new, determined intensity there. "We need to talk," he said, his tone suggesting this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. My heart raced again as I sat across from him in the living room. The tension between us was almost unbearable. We both knew this conversation had been coming for some time, and nothing would be the same after it. Henry looked away, his voice softer. "Emma, I'm sorry for what happened yesterday. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. When I saw the door open, I shouldn't have looked." His voice faltered, searching for the right words. I couldn't hold back the rush of emotions. My face flushed, and I tried to hide it, nodding in response. "I was so embarrassed yesterday," I said. "But I don't blame you. It's just that everything in this house feels so strange lately." Henry looked up at me, his gaze unwavering. "It's not just you, Emma. It's strange that Danny is gone, and his detachment from you. It's hard not to notice." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had been trying to ignore Danny's lack of attention, but hearing Henry say it out loud cracked something open inside me. "It doesn't matter," I said quietly, though my voice lacked confidence. Henry exhaled deeply, shifting in his seat. "It does matter. It's clear that you feel alone, and that's not your fault." My eyes filled with tears. Hearing my loneliness spoken out loud made it undeniable. I had thought I had gotten used to it. I whispered, yet the warmth in Henry's eyes urged me to explain further. "Sometimes, though, it feels overwhelmingly intense, and I'm unsure of what to do." As Henry placed his hand over mine, my breath briefly caught. "You shouldn't feel loneliness, Emma," he said, his voice deep and firm. "Someone like you shouldn't be burdened by such emotions." For a moment, I was immersed in the power of his touch. When I looked at his face, I saw the sincerity in his expression. At that instant, I realized that what we shared was far more than a misunderstanding. Henry wore a serious expression, and I tried to change the subject. "I want to talk about Kari," I said, my voice steadier now. "I'm concerned about you. You said you ended things with her, but why?" Henry paused for a moment, then took a deep breath, meeting my eyes. "He said he hasn't felt anything for her in a long time," Henry replied. "The relationship ended. I couldn't accept it immediately. I examined his words carefully. Why now? What made you decide to end it at this moment?" I asked. Henry looked away briefly, then turned his attention back to me. We were so close that I could feel his breath. "I care about you, Emma," he said, his voice soft but clear. "Carly doesn't matter anymore. You're what occupies my mind. It's been this way for a while, so I ended it." I tried to respond, but no words came. At that moment, Henry gently placed his hands on my waist and pulled me closer. Our lips were only a few inches apart. I knew this wasn't just a fleeting crush. This was a significant step. When Henry kissed me, it felt as though time stopped. His warmth, confidence, and the desire I felt for him completely enveloped me. My heart raced, and my mind went blank. The moment was only about him and me. The intensity of my emotions pushed me to act. I slowly pulled away from the kiss, stepping back slightly to catch my breath. Looking into his eyes, I said, "I've been drawn to you for a while, Henry." As I confessed, I felt every barrier between us vanish. There was a brief silence, the pivotal pause when we both considered how far we were willing to go. I looked at him, took a deep breath, and stood up. Henry looked surprised, but a hint of longing flickered in his eyes. "I can't keep doing this alone," I said, my voice steady, yet firm. I had held back for so long that stopping now felt pointless. Henry's eyes were locked on mine, his gaze intense and captivating. Slowly, I loosened the belt of my robe, feeling the fabric fall from my shoulders and slip to the floor. His gaze followed every movement, his eyes never leaving me, as the robe pulled at my feet. I silently walked toward the large couch in the living room, gently allowing myself to sink into the soft cushions. Henry didn't hesitate for a second. He methodically removed his clothes, each movement deliberate, as if defying time itself. One of his knees rested on the couch next to me, his hands gripping the cushions on either side of my body for support as he leaned closer. I could feel his breath on my skin, his warmth coursing through me like electricity. When our gazes met, his lips slowly came closer to mine. The kiss went beyond physical. It was a release of all the emotions I had repressed, thoughts and desires born from my isolation. Henry's hands moved gently to my waist, his touch both tender and firm. I focused on him, feeling an inner pull toward him. As Henry continued, my feelings for him deepened. Soon after, my body shook, and I closed my eyes, letting out a soft sound. When I opened them, I saw Henry's broad shoulders and rested my hands on his back. His face was flushed, and we both panted for breath. I was fully immersed in the moment, and Henry seemed overwhelmed with joy and affection. As my body trembled again, I dug my nails into Henry's back. He must have enjoyed it, as he relaxed in response. I felt an inner warmth that was completely delightful. Each time I shared with Henry brought both exhilaration and unease. Danny had a few more days before he returned, and during that time, Henry and I shared intense encounters that knew no boundaries. What we did felt so instinctual and unavoidable that its wrongness faded into the background. Henry's presence eased the emptiness caused by Danny's neglect, revitalizing my spirit. When Danny came back, his indifference remained unchanged, and the isolation I had felt during his absence, alongside the comfort I found with Henry, only made the divide between us more evident. Henry and I kept texting despite Danny's presence. Talking to him filled a void in my life that I couldn't ignore. One evening, Danny mentioned he had a work meeting and wouldn't be home. I couldn't hide the excitement building inside me. I quickly typed a message to Henry. "Danny's not home tonight. It's just us. I'm really looking forward to seeing you." I hesitated for a moment before sending it, my heart racing in my chest. After sending the message, I put my phone down, a subtle smile forming as I thought about the night ahead. Little did I know, elsewhere Henry was dealing with his ex-girlfriend Carly. Her persistent obsession with him had become unbearable, prompting him to clarify their situation. Carly's eyes burned with determination and revenge as she interrupted him. "Carly, enough," Henry said, his voice firm but tired. "Stay out of my life. I don't want you here." At that moment, Henry's phone vibrated on the table. Carly's attention shifted, and she glanced at the TV. Her smile faded, and her gaze turned cold. "I saw you two kiss," Carly spat, her voice dripping with venom. Henry reached for his phone, but Carly grabbed it before he could. "I'll tell Danny everything," she threatened, her eyes burning with hostility. "I've been watching you, Henry." Henry's heart sank as he realized things were about to spiral out of control. Later that evening, Henry told me about Carly. His tone was firm. "I talked to her yesterday. Nothing happened. I told her to stay out of my life. She's been a problem, but it's over now." His words were somewhat reassuring, but I couldn't shake the unease that lingered. The next day, Danny's behavior took an unexpected turn. Since breakfast, he had been unusually attentive, asking me questions and observing me closely. "Are you okay, Emma? Has anything been going on?" Danny asked, his voice tinged with doubt. This behavior continued throughout the day, and my fear grew with every passing moment. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I messaged Henry. "Danny's acting strange. He seems to suspect something. I'm really scared." As soon as I sent the message, the doorbell rang. When Danny opened the door, Carly's voice echoed down the hallway. I turned toward the door and felt a chill run through me as I saw her standing there, a sly smile on her lips. Her eyes flicked between me and Henry, and it was clear she knew everything. Danny, still unaware, asked, "Carly, what are you doing here?" His tone was confused, but Carly's gaze didn't falter, as if she had planned this moment carefully. "Hello, Emma," Carly said, her voice dripping with contempt. Her piercing stare froze me, and I couldn't breathe. She shot a withering glance at Henry before turning her attention back to me, her smile widening. "It seems we have a lot to discuss," she said, her grin full of dangerous satisfaction. In that instant, something inside me broke. My mind raced with chaotic thoughts. What does she know? What will she say? Will she tell Danny? Is this the end? My hand trembled uncontrollably as I looked at Henry, whose eyes reflected my fear. But the most imposing presence in the room was Carly, standing there with her calm, menacing smile. I realized this was just the beginning. Stay tuned, there's much more to come. Don't miss what's next. If you've made it this far, it's clear my story resonates with you. There's more to share, and you won't want to miss a single detail. Click follow, turn on notifications, and leave a comment with your predictions for what happens next.